Appreciate y'all joining. Standard stuff, but if you haven't been to a partner webinar with us before, typical Zoom, feel free to put stuff in the chat. I have people on the call that are more than happy to respond to questions or direct you or post resources. So chat is wide open. I will ask though, if you have a question that you want to ask us on the call, please use the Q&A piece, because that pulls it out for me specifically and says like, hey, Kate, you have a question from the audience, so that I know to answer it. So would really appreciate it if you do want us to answer something on the call today, you use Q&A. Sometimes if the chat gets busy or if I lose the window, I apologize. I don't see your question. So Q&A, Zoom does not let me miss it. We'll give it another minute, just in case, and then we'll get started because we get lots of good content. 2 people joining me today that you may or may not have seen before: Russ Ollis, Amy McMahon, 2 subject matter experts in their fields that I am super thrilled about. So we're going to have a good time here and introduce y'all to Vision One. If you've seen it before, we've got some great stuff. If you haven't seen it before, you're in for a treat. So lots of good things. All right, we're 2 minutes after. Let's go ahead and get started so we can just jump on in. All right, so introducing Trend Vision One. So like, why Vision One? Why a platform? Why something that is like single console? Why not best of breed kind of strategy or conversation here? When we're working with customers that come to Trend, they're really, really impressed by our ability to address the growing attack surface, because it's no longer about like endpoint and servers or email and network. It's more about supply chain and exponential growth in SaaS applications. We've got a ton of AI coming our way. And there's a lot of conversation around, is AI safe? Or how do I make AI safe? That's part of the growing attack surface that we're addressing. Of course, work from home, people are still working from home. Hello, I think everyone on our call today is working from home. Operational technology, all of the above. And when attack vectors come into an environment, they're like a tornado. They don't really look at the landscape to see what's going on and choose their path. They just jump in and do whatever damage they can. And so if you're approaching your cybersecurity strategy as like a siloed conversation, you're really disconnecting that information and visibility. We want to put everything in one place, and we want to make sure we can see holistically what's going on. So again, if we're siloing out some of that strategy, what that looks like on paper might be something like this. And don't worry about reading too much what's on my slide, because I know it's a messy, bulky, crazy slide. But the point is, you've got a vendor specifically for email and cloud apps. You got a vendor specifically for firewall. You might have a vendor for IoT and OT. You might have a vendor for data security and data loss prevention. But everything else might be cut and pasted together. And that's really just a very ineffective way and inefficient way to address a cybersecurity story. And what we really want to do is start piecing together something that's more cohesive, more consolidated, something that can communicate with itself. And that's what Vision One, our platform, does. So this is a good demonstration of what our approach is overall. Now, this graphic, again, a little heavy. I put little boxes around the 2 pieces we're going to focus on today, because from a competitive differentiator perspective, Trend Micro's network security is crazy amazing, but also our attack surface risk management piece. And that is specific to Trend. That risk word is there for a reason, because of our ability to quantify risk in an environment. Russ is going to cover that for you. And I love hearing Russ talk about it, because it's just such a compelling story and need. Those are the 2 that we focus on today, but everything else on your screen, we can cover, we can address, we can complement any user's environment. So lots of good stuff there. Why we take this approach? What are we trying to achieve? You know, outcomes are important. It's not just about features. We all know that endpoint security is a thing. We all know that XDR is important. We all know that services help extend, the longevity and success of SOC teams. But what are we truly trying to achieve when we mature our cybersecurity posture? Consolidation is a big one. Over the years, we've seen a ton of best of breed go into environments that, are a console here and a dashboard there and this piece of information here and this software over there. And if a security admin has to sit down in the morning and log into 12 different consoles, if he gets breached, then he's got 12 different consoles of information that he's got to cross-check to figure out what happened. Again, it's just about efficiency and effectiveness, and consolidation really is the name of the game these days. Visibility, also huge. Again, attack vectors, they don't really care how you've structured your environment or your teams or your skill sets. They just want to get in there. And being able to see what's happening across not just silos, but organizations or pieces of your network. So child companies, parent companies, software applications, hybrid between on-prem and SaaS, all of those disconnects, you want to be able to see holistically what's going on so that you can better understand and better respond to those security events. And finally, automation. I think I would get fired if I didn't talk about AI on this call. We do have different AI features within Vision One to help our security teams move faster. It's also a great way to address the skills or staffing shortages that organizations are facing when it comes to filling out a mature and formal SOC. So being able to go into Vision One and automate response actions based on, past events, or use our generative AI companion tool to figure out, hey, consolidate this data, tell me more, what do you recommend? Those automations really, truly help save time when minutes count. And why does saving time matter? And why does helping staff matter? Because there's so much information out there. I mean, 1.25 billion raw logs. If you exported every single alert within a security console into an Excel file, how big would that Excel file be? And if that's the only thing you had to figure out how to put the puzzle pieces together, I'll talk to you in a month. Let me know what happens. So being able to take a look at that data and really drill down into what actually happened, what's important, what's critical, and what do I need to take action on specifically, that's why these outcomes matter. That's why taking the approach that we do matters, because we know from a real life perspective, without these approaches, this is what SOC teams face. And we need to make sure that we're maximizing their success. We don't want the 1.25 billion reality. We want the 2 incidents that they really have to prioritize and spend their time on. That matters, truly, truly. I mentioned AI before, the companion. I wanted to throw a screenshot in here and what an incident might look like, what that help might look like. So we have prompts like explain this alert. Now a junior admin, a T1, maybe in the industry for 6 months might need a little bit of help understanding the context. Context is king. And being able to have that summarization of the information is super critical. But, what is this? How many of you guys just read Twitter all day, every day, and just keep on top of all the new things coming into cybersecurity? I wish we had the time to do that, but we don't. So a good threat intelligence library is also key. What is Mimikat? Same thing. It doesn't matter what your knowledge is. Let us help you. We can prompt you with that. All right. So that's the idea between the platform, the feature set, the outcome-driven metrics that we're trying to push I shouldn't say push, but trying to provide with that Vision One story, why we are doing things the way that we are doing, and customers are responding so well to it. But attack surface risk management at Trend, I'm sure you know attack surface management, which is the industry term. Big deal, all those open doors in the organization. Of course, we want to see more of what's going on, or potentially even predict where a breach might occur. So this is step one. From a partner perspective, ASRM is step one in understanding your customer's environment and how you as a partner can provide the most value in those conversations, and maybe strategize a little bit on projects or budget, some other things, so that you truly know what's the most important. So Russ, I'm going to pass it to you. Feel free to reintroduce yourself, but you just let me know when I need to change the slide.
Okay. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. She said my name's Russ. Been on board about 3 years now. I came over from a customer. I was actually a deputy CISO at a big county government, and we ran our security practice on the Vision One platform. We were very early adopters of attack surface risk management. This is my favorite part of the whole platform because I think it makes the most difference in how we approach the security problems. So we're going to dig into a little bit and kind of talk about it. But as Kate mentioned, right, you guys are probably familiar with attack surface management or attack surface discovery solutions that are already out there in the market. And this is kind of where they land in terms of what they do for the most part, right? It's really a focus on external attack surface, internet-facing assets, and cloud assets, right? And they do a pretty good job with identifying those external assets and helping folks understand some vulns or some misconfigurations around those specific types of assets. But when we think about attack surface in the larger context, our external attack surface is just a very, very small portion of what our actual attack surface problem is. So if we go ahead and advance, we'll want to talk about sort of a little bit broader context around attack surface, right? When you think about an enterprise or any organization, and you think about what is actually contained within their attack surface, this is a much more sort of comprehensive kind of view, right? If you look across the top, you can see there are lots of different kinds of assets. This is not inclusive of everything, but it's a pretty good sort of swing at identities and apps and servers and endpoints and apps and containers and all of the things, cloud, otherwise, right? We've got a lot of things in our environment that increase our attack surface and increase the opportunity for bad things to happen. And then down the left-hand side, you can see there's a list of sort of security concerns that we might need to take into account for each of those kinds of assets, right? So if we're just looking at it from an external attack surface perspective, we really are missing the bulk of what we care about, right? So go ahead to the next slide, please. When we think about it from our perspective, right, we talk about attack surface risk management, and it really is intended to cover the full scope of the attack surface, right? So that's how that kind of begins, is with the discovery. I have a bunch of native telemetry. I have a bunch of third-party telemetry. Lots of sources of data that I'm bringing into the platform to discover all of the attack surface, known, unknown, internal, external. Kate just killed my slide.
Someone said it was frozen, so I'm just resharing it really quick.
And so you think about that. We're bringing all of this information together, and sort of the life cycle that we go through is that discovery is the first step, right? But once I have some visibility into it, I then take the next step, which is really around assessing and prioritizing those assets or those discovered entities for risk, right? And not just risk, I'm also looking at these assets in the context of business criticality, right? Because all assets aren't created equal. Some assets in my environment are much more important to my business operations than others. And part of this assessment and prioritization of risk factors in the impact of a given type of asset, right? So we discover it, we then assess it and start to prioritize it. What's the most important? What do we need to worry about first? And then we start to give folks the information they need to mitigate. Some of it we can automate. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward, but it's really about seeing it to start with, right? Because only when we have the full view of the attack surface do we really have a good understanding of what the scope of the problem is and what is the order that we need to approach the problem so that we can make the most difference to reduce our risk in the most meaningful way, right? I want to call out that last bullet, right? Because it's really important when we think about this whole sort of life cycle we're in. The intent is to reduce the likelihood we have an event, right? I see all the things, I assess the things, whatever. But I'm still going to have events happen. And if I only have a very, very narrow view of how those assets that are part of an attack are related with the rest of my ecosystem, I can only do so much in terms of how I investigate and respond. So having that contextual information and the broader understanding of how all of these assets are related to each other also helps me investigate more fully and respond more completely so that I can, truly respond to events as they occur, right? Next slide. So this is what we're doing, right? We're going to show you a couple of screenshots, not too much, but we've talked a little bit about it. We're discovering, we're inventorying. You can see sort of the interface a little bit. We're categorizing all these assets and giving you some prioritized lists with risk scores. It's all based on our native telemetry, as well as some third-party stuff that we'll talk about, because I got a lot of sources, but I don't have all the data. I need some third-party partners. I have to mention AI so I don't get fired. So we're going to use some of this AI stuff on the back end. Cloud makes it all possible, right? So we're doing a really, really thorough job of profiling all these assets, understanding what they do, how they work together, what are the concerns, and then we're using that to predict attack paths so that we can give your defenders an opportunity to understand what's a likely attack scenario so that they know where to insert themselves to prevent that thing from happening, right? So it's a really powerful way to view it. Next. Yep. And we talked about third party. We've got a big third party ecosystem already. It's growing all the time. We're bringing in identity, SIM, SOAR, threat intel, you name it, right? We're bringing in a lot of different data to populate this attack surface discovery, database so that we can then make all these relationships happen and show how this works. We love to play vendor bingo with the customers and just kind of go through and say, well, what do you have? What do you have? What do you have? So as you guys are thinking about your own customers and some of the things that are already in place, we want to work with what's in the ecosystem now to the degree that it makes sense, an eye towards consolidation in the future, but we got to start where people are and kind of take them down the path as these things sort of make sense, right? Will they ever become 100% Trend Micro Shop? We certainly hope so, but we realize that that's not always in the cards. So we're going to continue to work with third parties and increase the value of everything they've got as well.
I think it's really important to call out from the partner perspective. When I was a sales rep years ago, not that many years ago, but years ago, I always focused my business on vendor displacements because at the time it was mostly centered around endpoint and email. So you really don't want to run 2 endpoint solutions or 2 email solutions. So it's like, pick me, don't pick them, or uninstall them and use me instead. That is so not the name of the game anymore. Because of these third-party integrations, and our list is constantly growing. If you just sold a multi-million deal to your customer with Palo Alto or Fortinet, Microsoft, congrats, man, that's awesome. And I don't have to disrupt any of that. Yep. In fact, let me get in and start complementing that investment. Let me expand the value of that investment by sharing that information, by using those APIs and quantifying that risk. That's really more of the successful strategy between vendor and vendor that is occurring in the market these days. And I think as a partner rep, you just so benefit from that. You benefit from the fact that vendors are looking to work more together instead of tear each other apart. So this is a huge benefit for y'all, for sure. Yeah. All right, Russ, I had to jump in. But
no, you're good, please. So it's one thing, right? I'm bringing all this information together. I'm putting it all together in these lists, right? It's kind of not cool if I just give the defenders another big list of things to do, right? They've already got a giant list of things to do. So what we're doing with the automation and sort of the guidance, right, is I'm going to bring this stuff together. I'm going to automate as much as I can through some risk. I can continuously, I'm assessing risk. And so I can take some risk-based actions to mitigate risk sort of in real time. I can also have playbooks and sort of triggered type events where I can run automations, but I can't automate everything, right? Sometimes that's just too disruptive or customers just aren't ready for that sort of thing. So that third one is, for the things that I can't automate, I'm not just leaving you with a list of, hey, go do this. I'm also providing the guidance to help you understand why this is important. What are the steps that you need to take? And so it's what we talk about, with my own shop when I was in the customer side. This was our guided approach to security operations, right? The platform helped us understand what to focus on first and kind of led us down the path, whether it was risk reduction, pre-event activities, what do we need to be working on first, or whether it was in the context of detection and response, what are the things that we need to see? Is it bringing them to our attention so that we can respond to the right things, right? So there's a lot of automations and guidance in the platform to help folks be successful. What you'll see as we do that, right, is that suddenly you start to see this is really the platform story, right? Whether it's our stuff, third-party stuff, right? Bringing it all together into one place where I can get more information from more systems in front of more teams through less tools is how we streamline our security operations, right? And suddenly all of this stuff on the left-hand side of the screen that's, you know, a different team, different tools, different whatever, is not so disconnected and disjoined from the stuff on the right-hand side, right? It's usually different teams doing detection and response and those sorts of things than people who are doing patching and all the things that are risk reduction, right? And as Kate mentioned, they get siloed off. They don't share data. Nobody really understands why they're doing the things they're doing or how it's benefiting the organization if we do them. So when we get everybody singing from the same sheet of music by giving them a consistent view of the data, we suddenly start to see teams become a lot more collaborative in how they perform the full spectrum of security functions versus just their little niche, right? And the folks in MDR and detection and response can understand why this is important and vice versa. These become very powerful feedback mechanisms for each other to improve all of the security functions. So this is kind of where the platform takes you as you go. It's not overnight, right? This is a process you got to go through. It takes a little while to operationalize all this stuff. But once you start to see the benefit and you start to see some of those silos evaporate in organizations, it's very, very powerful. Last one for me, I think, we got to be able to prove what we do, right? So this is something that we struggle with, right? As security teams and as practitioners, we're always struggling to demonstrate program value to our leadership, right? They want to know what they're getting for their investment in all these tools and people, and it's so expensive and what's going on, right? So we have to be able to take all of this data and report upwards in a way that proves our value. And there is no better way to do it than by watching a risk score, right? Over the course of months, if a risk score starts at 60 or 70 and you can demonstrate, hey, over the last 90 days, we've gone from a 75 to a 48. I can present all the things that we did. I can show you how I'm focusing teams on the right work at the right time. It's not just the guy running off thinking he's doing what's most important because that's all he knows about. You bring all this into context, you ensure your teams have the right priorities, and you're able to report this up and compare yourselves to other people in the same geo, same vertical, whatever. You know, that's a powerful motivator for a lot of folks, is how do I look compared to the guy next door? And so there's obviously you got to be able to demonstrate the value of these tools. And again, the more data you get in one place, the better you can demonstrate this stuff. And for you guys who are looking at doing cyber risk assessments, we're going to mention that I think later. This ASRM tool is the cyber risk assessment tool that you guys can use in your own customers, as Kate mentioned, to not only discover sort of what their risk situation is, but also identify opportunities for yourselves to help them resolve that risk, right? If it uncovers that they need a whole bunch of work in, you know, whatever area it is, if it's not a practice that they're really competent at, that's a place for you guys to kind of swing in and say, hey, this is where your risk is really bad. This is what you need to focus on first. Can we help you do that, right? But you got to get that visibility and you got to help them tell that story about why it's important.
Absolutely, Russ. You nailed my pitch for me, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I was like ready to go because I'm like, I got to tee off the cyber assessment. And it's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
Russ just made me in that conversation, so I appreciate it.
As you guys can tell, I love to talk about this stuff. I'm happy to do any follow-ups. If you got, you got our contact info, you'll get this stuff after the meeting today. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you got questions or thoughts about how you might be able to take advantage of this.
Absolutely, yeah. If you think of some, I mean, obviously Q&A is here for y'all if you think of anything or need anything. But after the call, I know I usually have to stew on information before I come up with questions. Yes, we are resources, field-facing resources, partner resources, customer resources. You guys need us. You let partners know or partner teams know or let us know. More than happy to jump in and help. So thank you, Russ. Appreciate
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
You bet. So yeah, attack surface, huge starting point for conversations. Great opportunity discovery tool. But let's maybe pivot a little bit more towards the tech stack itself. Now, don't get me wrong, you can sell attack surface risk management. That is a product that your customers can buy. But network security, if you're scared of network, do not be. One, Amy is fantastic. But two, this is just about talking about the benefits of the network security strategy, but also what Trend does incredibly well. People don't really recognize Trend as a true network competitive differentiator, but y'all, I'm telling you, some of the things that we are capable of on the network side is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So we're going to highlight that today because, again, it's just one of those other reasons that if your customers are looking for opportunities around great strategic conversations and they mention network, I want you all to think of Trend Micro. So Amy, I'm going to pass it to you to get started. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. I know you're keeping your camera off because you're having a couple issues today. No big deal. We can see your face in your picture. So you're set. But let me know when you're ready to move on.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate, and a great discussion, Russ. It's always hard following you, but we really are talking about tying everything together. I'm Amy. I am a part of a US-based team specializing in NDR for network security. My background, I was part of the acquisition in 2016 of the Tipping Point business unit from HPE. And I would love to say that Trend really wanted to get into the hardware business and be a player there for IPS and dedicated appliance-based security tools, but they bought us for the security research and the threat intelligence. And we've been partners for a really long time before that, talking about lateral movement, players are playing in the space of breach detection, east-west traffic, and complementing our north-south traditional IPS story. So the attack surface risk management from a network perspective is usually identified under the terminology of vulnerability management. And the XDR piece is that collection of the data from multiple sources, the correlation, and the ability to respond to the risk, to mitigate, to remediate problems within the environment, vulnerability assessment, and virtual patching. So we're going to talk just a little bit on a very high level, but I would, as Russ said, I'm available for any post discussions on this. I've been doing it for a really long time and very excited about the correlation of the networking tools being integrated into our platform story with Vision One. Next, please. Okay, so the network landscape, of course, has changed. And this is a real simple slide that there's more users and more devices and more work from home. And so we have to be able to pivot to be both agile and pivoting to address speeds with growing network environments. But we also have to be able to pivot to work collaboratively or to augment tool sets within security organizations, whether those are small mom and pop organizations all the way to the enterprise. Everybody has the challenge at the network level to be able to harness data and to be able to achieve the ability to make correlations when you're doing investigations, to get to the answer and get to the data that is relevant to reduce risk for your customers. Of course, when people look at Tipping Point or the Trend products in the network space, most of my customers are concerned about mitigating the liability of malicious data being sourced from their environment. So they want to be able to keep the baddies out, but also that they're not propagating and being harmful to their business partners, to their customers, or to internal parts of the business. Next. So what is NDR? In a couple easy assessments, it's the continuous real-time monitoring. So being able to eliminate next, you can just step through these all. We'll just talk through them. So the being able to eliminate blind spots using advanced AI and machine learning techniques, doing that data correlation that I was talking about, and to be able to identify from workflows, investigations of those issues. We have to be able to perform deep, detailed analysis. And we have to have that validated with the threat intelligence that I told you was so important to trend. Again, having a network solution like an IPS that's integrated as part of our solutions natively is something very unique to the XDR environments. Most people have to rely on a third-party call to maybe a firewall, whether that's Palo or Cisco or Fortinet, etc. By having response tools at the network level, we can mitigate risks at the network level faster by integrating. Now, that's not to say that everybody has to have a tipping point at the edge to augment their next-gen firewalls. We can certainly integrate. We are very open to integration, as Russ showed you with our third-party tools. And just touching base on those third-party tools, very important for visibility by being able to share suspicious objects, to collaborate or to augment the tool sets that are on there, or to identify and to automate those vulnerability assessments, and to be able to rapidly respond to it. So all of these things, as I talked to you first about the vulnerability management, is to identify the risk and to build a stronger risk posture so that you are continuously monitoring and continuously improving with automation to increase the performance and security effectiveness of your environment. So some of these challenges that customers face are the mean time to identify and the mean time to contain. And next, you just hit, yeah. So mean time to identify, on average, 204 days. That's in an average environment. And mean time to contain, 73 days. So what we, as a security-focused organization, want to be able to provide is a mechanism that we can automate those responses, identify the risk quicker, and help to mitigate or to provide solutions that maybe aren't as coarse as doing a complete update on every single endpoint. And that's really what we're getting into with a virtual patching solution, like our network solution, where we can proactively stop the exploitation from a network perspective of threats that are identified for vulnerable assets within the environment. So stopping that exploitation. Next. Okay, we know this. Attackers love those unmanaged assets, and we have to be able to harness that data. Next. Encryption. So over 95% of web traffic is encrypted. And if you're dealing with legacy NDR, unless you have a mechanism that's integrated with third-party solutions or packet brokers, we have native tools within our networking tool set that can perform decryption, both inbound for server side and outbound for client. And a tightly integrated solution gets you to risk response and mitigation faster. Next. So what we like to talk about when we're talking about vulnerability management is the improved time to protect. So we don't want the 700 days. We want to be able to identify the risk by integration of vulnerability assessment using partners like Qualys, Rapid7, Tenable, Nessus, integrating that into the patch management process, either by a manual or an automated response within Vision One. And this virtual patching, where the integration of the 0-day initiative allows us to provide patching, again, for those known and unknown or undisclosed vulnerabilities. Next. So some of the big questions, everybody can read these. Being able to collect all of that evidence and see all of the relevant data. Just because you are able to collect, you need a way to be able to bring to the surface the most critical data that has been collected. Because as Kate shared, there's lots and lots of data. And the handling of the data is usually the bane of all SOC analysts. Do you actually understand what's connected to the network? Are you blind to certain unmanaged assets? Are you capable of seeing malicious files hiding in plain sight? So, and also, if giving the availability of making a connection to all devices. Let's say Kate and Russ are communicating, and I reach out to both of them because I've got beach-headed malware, and I'm collecting data. Wouldn't it be great to have a look back in time to see when was I first infected, and all of the devices that I might have, as an infected host, might have communicated with. This is a very important piece and this data is collected from a network perspective. Next.
Absolutely. I love that you included these questions for our partners, Amy, because I feel like these are solid conversation starters or solid
and
evaluation
that's
questions.
One of the reasons. I know we're really short on time here, but one of the really we can go to the next slide.
You're good. I'll just click through. You made them so pretty and animated. I'm kind of like,
oh, thank you.
I really admire them. But.
Yeah. So let's talk about the NDR story with Trend Vision One. What's important for everybody to understand is the differences between events and detections and telemetry. So a network sensor, you can think of that as a lateral collector of data from intra-switch, east-west traffic, maybe a deep discovery inspector or other tools in the breach detection world. And then you can look at, from the network perspective, also the IPS, which is traditionally a north-south. Those are both tools that are collecting detections and events. But that data, it doesn't turn into telemetry until it is parsed through a tool like our Vision One to make those correlations and make those assessments. Also coupled with the threat intelligence, so that the visibility is churned out, the correlations are made, and that we then merge together the whole story of the attack surface and the detection and the response. So XDR and ASRM coming together with network data that is collected from specific network elements. Traditional endpoint, cloud, mail sensors also are very important into this, but we're also collecting that data and the events from sources such as the third-party elements that Russ shared with us, coming from different partners, working with vulnerability assessment. Think of it this way: if you perform a vulnerability scan from a Qualys or a Nessus, all of the data is collected about the vulnerabilities that are identified through that scanning assessment. It also allows the correlation of those devices, whether those are endpoints or servers, devices, etc. Do they have protection on them? Is it mismanaged? Is it not up to date? Or are they void of any kind of protection? So we're getting data about, again, that data turns into telemetry once it's performed with the correlation of our threat intelligence. Another key third-party tool is for contextual information coming from Active Directory or Entra. So you get, rather than just an IP address, you get user identification. Now back to this zero-day initiative. So the zero-day initiative is part of traditionally from the tipping point side of the business. It's the world's largest bug bounty program, and a leader of research and discovery that many of the competitors in the space still use for they will actually commission research and discovery so that the those other vendors can use research to create their own protection. So pretty powerful. And the zero-day initiative in a very high level is independent researchers bring vulnerability information to us. They work in conjunction with our research lab, going to the vendor to validate. And once that is proven that there is a vulnerability, the researcher is paid. The manufacturer or the vendor of the vulnerability is then indicate it. Then the timer starts for patching or public disclosure. In the interim, what we do is create filters for that virtual patch that we can give our customers protection against that exploitation of the vulnerability, whether that's day one or whether that is day 700 and some odd. So, yeah.
Completely. I love the ZDI piece of it, because when we talk about high confidence, high fidelity alerts, machine learning, like that type of like, is the data you're receiving actually good data? Programs like this, intelligence like trends, the network detection and response capabilities, the third-party integrations, all of them are just building out the integrity of that telemetry data, which is so important. Because if you're only going to focus on 2 events, you got to make sure that they're good 2 events. Like, it's not like you don't want to raise the alarm every day. So, Amy, in the interest of time, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Just go right ahead and finish up.
Yeah, but I do like the content you did provide in these slides, which we'll get a copy of after the presentation. So you can kind of get a little sneak peek. I love that you included the third-party stuff. You really nailed your slides, Amy. I'm so sorry to skip.
I always get very excited that I'm going to be able to zoom through and talk and give examples. So there's so much that it's so exciting. Kate, you and I have had many conversations about how partners have brought us opportunities, and we've been able to grow just on simple discussions about solving problems rather than throwing products. And that's really the keystone of everybody is let's solve some problems together.
You totally led me into my next slide, because I had this in the beginning. And I'm so sorry, I know we're at time. Stay with me for just a couple more minutes if you can. But solve problems, focus on outcomes. Now, I know if your customers come to you and they say, hey, I need XDR. Yeah, of course, we got XDR. But what are you concerned about with XDR? What are you concerned about that your workers are working from home? Let us help you build out a strategy so that we can truly provide a state-of-the-art cybersecurity platform solution and not just throw products over the wall and check boxes and plug holes. Like, that's not the name of the game anymore. We've got to be more intentional with what we choose to deploy in our environments and how we're using our tools. So this slide is perfect for visualizing the types of conversations or questions or problems you can solve with your customers. Russ did a fantastic job of taking my presentation for the assessment over. He showed you that attack surface risk management quantification dashboard, the categorization of that risk. That is what you can run in your customer environments. They do not need to be Trend Micro customers for you to run this assessment. It is basically a product trial key. You can do so by installing software. I highly recommend it, but it is not required. You can do it off of APIs for something a little bit lighter and faster. But this absolutely helps identify those problems so that you as a partner can offer solutions. Like Russ said, we would love for your customers to be 100% Trend Micro. That would be awesome. But that's not always realistic. It's not always feasible. It's certainly not in a 12-month time frame. It might take 5 years for them to get there. So use this tool, whether it's Trend Micro or not, as the product solution to better your relationship with your customers, to provide that cybersecurity value. You don't have to be an expert to understand that when something is high risk, you should probably be talking about it. So absolutely use us as a helpful tool. I'm going to say thank you for attending, and there's QR codes on the screen. However, we did get 2 questions in the chat I want to call out super quick because I think they are good ones, both of them from Robert. So I appreciate you, Robert, for asking them. One of them is Trend Micro and specifically Vision One working with schools and their approvals for qualifications reimbursement in the federal ERATE, so E-rate programs. So I will say, so Vision One being the platform product. So Vision One is the product. We call it a platform, but Vision One is what you sell. It's our dashboard. It's our console. Trend Micro being the vendor, obviously. I want to make that distinction just because I know there's a lot of names out there. So yes, in tandem together. The answer to this question does depend on the state. So what I recommend, generally yes, but I recommend reaching out to your sales rep for the customer of the school that you're wanting to position Trend with and having a conversation with them about the specific state. Some of them, I believe, like Texas, and I only know this because I live in Texas. I know for sure we're doing stuff with TextRamp. So yes, have the conversation because it does vary state to state. Your other question, Robert, how is the best way to communicate with the Vision One team? Do we do this through our CAM? Fantastic question, as always. Your CAM is probably your best first stop because they have access to everyone within Trend and can quarterback that question or need very simply. But Russ, Amy, and I, we all have open door policies when it comes to questions, concerns, customer needs, partner needs, whatever. So you can always check with us. We can't help with quotes or deal registrations, things like that. So your CAM is why I say your first stop. But if we need to get involved or if you have a question for us specifically, you can email us. And you'll have that contact information after the call, but it's our first name _ last name @Trend Micro if you do need us. So more than happy to. Comment from Kevin. Survey doesn't list July for which Accelerator webinar session. Okay, so probably I am assuming Emma can confirm this is the July session, so you're good. Unless it's asking for more specific information. Oh, probably like which Accelerator webinar session did you attend? Is that the question? Then it doesn't help us out at all. Okay, good comment, Kevin. I do appreciate that. Let me lob that over to Emma who can assist. And we'll get that for you. All right, y'all. I know I kept you an extra 5 minutes, but the content today was just so good. We had so much to cover. Again, we're going into second half and we're really excited about the wins that we have on deck. But we're also excited about the opportunities that we are teeing up for 2025. We love new logos. We love existing customers. Whatever you have for us, we want to talk to them. We want to help you. Let us know. So I hope this information was helpful for you to kind of start thinking about which customers could benefit from that risk assessment or benefit from that technology, that change in operational structure, all that good stuff. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. Keep your questions coming if you need them, and then you'll get everything that you need in an email here pretty shortly. So I will release you guys back to your day. Super appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.